Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection. This is where we share our stories, insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to live a fulfilling and meaningful life. We're on a mission to reclaim the word sensitive and help the world see the strength in sensitivity. Now, today's episode, we don't have Robbie, we have me, Philippa Robinson, and I have a wonderful guest, Jackie Williamson. Now, Jackie is an ex-solicitor like I am, and she helps overwhelmed HSPs raise their vibration and recover their mojo. And Jackie and I came across each other in October 2023 as part of the HSP Awakening Summit. And I got chatting on LinkedIn with Jackie about being an ex-solicitor and about being an HSP. So I invited her here today to have a deeper conversation about that, and she accepted. So Jackie, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be with you today.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here, and it's lovely to actually meet you sort of in real life, or what real life
Yes.
can be, what can be real life these days. So it's lovely to meet you. And, you know, I get asked a question a lot, which is really interesting. So I thought I'd ask you the same question, if that's okay. And I know you don't know anything about this, but the question I get asked a lot is, oh my gosh, you used to be a solicitor. How on earth did you cope with being a solicitor and also being an HSP?
Yeah.
Do you get that question?
I don't get that exact question because I've only recently discovered that I'm an HSP. So
that question might be coming then.
Yeah, so I've only recently started talking about it, but I do get, how come you've gone from being a solicitor to working in wellbeing, because they seem poles apart.
Yes. Okay, so it's kind of quite similar, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So what's your response?
So my response is that actually they might seem poles apart, but I was always interested in well-being. And when I look back, you know, it's that old thing of when you look back where you've been and where you've got to, you join the dots together.
Yeah.
Bits that I liked the best about being a solicitor were the working with the junior lawyers, training them, mentoring them. And I was always interested in people's well-being. And I was always saying to more junior staff, more junior colleagues, don't work crazy hours, you don't need to do that, go home at a sensible hour and all that kind of thing, which is the kind of the stuff that I do now with clients. And I was obviously on my way to that while I was in the job still.
Yeah, I love that. And actually my response is really quite similar. So that's really interesting. And whilst you were telling your colleagues, you were interested in your colleagues' well-being and sort of saying to them, look, it's a job, it's part of your life, go home, make sure that you get plenty of rest and all those things. Were you doing that?
I knew you were going to ask that. I was not so great at practicing what I preach.
Yeah, me neither, by the way, hands up, me neither.
I did get better at it towards the end of my time in law, which was frankly one of the reasons I got out of it, was because I realised that it was doing me absolutely no good for my own well-being. In fact, it was the main reason I got out of it. But yeah, and I sort of had times when I was feeling really overwhelmed, super stressed, and looking back, I probably had moments of burnout, but I just kept pushing through because I just thought that that's what you had to do. And so I got to that point where, having been through it myself, I didn't want other people to go through it. So that was why I was so keen to tell other colleagues, don't do that,
Yeah. Do as I say and not as I do.
Do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, gosh, that is so familiar. It's like listening. Everything that you're saying is like could have come from me as well. It's really interesting. And looking back, I mean, hindsight, we can always sort of see different things, can't we? Or different. When you're in it, you just can't see it. And did you have any feelings like, you talked a bit about it probably was burnout? I mean, I know I definitely did have, but well, with the benefit of hindsight, I didn't realize at the time it was burnout, and it was my last big dose of burnout, 2020 2017-ish that made me then leave. I mean, it still took me 2 years to leave, but I did leave, and then I've gone back, but that's a whole different other story. I didn't recognize it as burnout, and I just felt at those times, in those moments of overwhelm and those like moments of I just don't know what to do next. I mean, I'd pick things up and put them down and pick things up and put them down and not actually do anything because I just didn't know where to start. There were so many people clamoring to have their work done next that I just sometimes couldn't decide which to do next. And I did not appreciate that sometimes I could decide which to do next, and other times I couldn't decide which to do next. So there was something that perhaps I needed to address. I never saw that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because, when you say that, I was like that too. There were certain times when I'm like, I've got my to-do list, and I come in, and I get on with this, and this. As far as you can, as the day goes, because as you know, the phone goes and you end up doing something completely different.
Exactly. You can have a plan in the morning that by the time you get to 6 p.m, you've still not done any of it.
Phone out the window. Yeah, exactly. But there were days when I could get on with it fine. And then other days when, like you say, I just had my desk piled with stuff, and because we weren't paperless then, it was kind of heading that way when I left. There were files all over the place, and you're like, I'll do that one. Shall I do that one?
Yes.
Yes, I completely resonate with what you just said.
Yeah. And the other thing, and the only reason I'm talking about this is because I think if anybody's listening, I want them to perhaps, if they're sort of recognizing a little bit of themselves in what we're talking about, I kind of want them to know it's not just them, because I always felt it was just me. Yeah. I used to look around and when, especially in those really dark times of like, I just can't do this, hey, it would be literal. I'd literally go and sit in the toilet and shut the door and like sit on the toilet and just go like almost bang my head against the wall a little bit, going, oh my God, what am I going to do? Yeah. But in those moments, all I could see around me, because of the lens I'm looking through, is everybody else is just being able to do this. They're just getting on with it. Yeah. What is wrong with me that I can't?
Yeah. But then you realise, don't you, subsequently, that pretty much everybody else was feeling the same. It's just that nobody talks about it.
Exactly. Everyone was busy hiding it.
Yeah, nobody wants to be seen as weak. And that's the problem in that kind of environment. Yeah. You don't want to be seen as the one who isn't up to scratch, because, you'll be the next one out.
Exactly. And I, even though I was like, feeling like that inside, I was still hiding away in the toilet in my darkest moments and then coming out with a, smile on my face and getting on with it. So I wasn't visibly struggling. I was just struggling inside. And it just got to the point where I'm like, I mean, it did take me 3 years of therapy. And then I was thinking, okay, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I can't. I didn't feel like I could go back. When did you leave?
I left in February 2019, so almost 5 years now ago.
Okay, yeah, so I left in June 2019 as well.
Yeah.
And do you miss it at all?
No, I miss some of the lovely friends that I made because I moved to a different part of the world and I don't see them as often. But no, I don't miss the law at all. I've had since I left, a couple of people have approached me and said, would I come back to do X, Y, Z, even if it was just a small project? I'm just like, no, I've had enough. It's not for me. I've just completely left law behind. Because even then, when those people contact me, I could sort of feel the stress within me rising just at the thought of going back into it. And so, no, I don't miss it.
I mean, it's probably triggering, your nervous system, into a trauma response, really, isn't it?
So, absolutely.
Yeah, because I have gone back a little bit, and I've only gone back because it came. I don't know. I was listening to my intuition, and it kind of was like, well, why not? Let's just see what's available. And I'd already moved into risk and compliance anyway. I hadn't been practicing since 2011, actually, I've gone back in a very different way for me. I'm being me. I'm saying I'm not going to take on too much. I'm owning the struggles I've had in the past. And I'm saying, look, I'm not going to put myself in that position again. So if it gets too much, I'm going to say it's too much. And also the person I'm working for is a woman, which is really nice. And she's great. And we get on really well. So the environment is very different. And it's a tiny firm.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Oh, that sounds really good. Yeah, because
it's been very healing actually for me to go back.
That is good.
Yeah.
It's always in big firms, massive firms. And then when I did go back after a 3-year period off, no, it was less than that, because I was made redundant from one firm. And then I kind of had that period of time. That was when it was the start of my healing journey, really, when I started working on myself. But there came a point when I thought, I need the money, frankly, at that point. And somebody approached me who was in a smaller firm, somebody I'd worked with previously, and I knew he was a really nice guy and he was the boss of this smaller firm, or that branch anyway. So I decided to go back for that reason, because of him. But then unfortunately, after a short time, that smaller firm got taken over by a massive one. And I was kind of back at square one. And that was what eventually just prompted me to say, enough's enough. I've got to get out.
Yeah, exactly. I used to work. So what sort of law? I'm just interested now. What sort of law did you do?
Professional indemnity.
Oh, did you?
So when you said risk, I thought,
okay. So I was a commercial property lawyer for years. That's what I practiced as. And then I moved, after my second child, I moved into claims handling, professional negligence claims.
Right.
And then I went to write risk and compliance newsletters for a big insurance company. They asked me when I left, if I would do that. So I did that for 2 years. And that's how I've segued into risk and compliance. So I come to it from a claims background, which is really, how interesting.
I was defending the claims. So I was acting for the insurers. Predominantly solicitors initially, but then I sort of did branch out onto, other professionals as well. But
yeah, that's what I did. I was when I was claims handler, but I was claims handling. You would have been a panel solicitor.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Oh, how interesting! What I didn't know that. Yeah, exactly. So that's how I've segued into what I do now. But I take my coaching with me there, which is really, really interesting. And So I think what we've just been talking about there, that it's the people that you went to work for this guy and you knew him and you liked him and you thought it would be a nice place to work. I went to this place that I'm at completely just for a short-term project, but they asked me to stay and I like them. So I've stayed and that's great. So before we move on to other things, I just wanted that. So that's an example of how because I think there's a lot of talk about HSPs can't do highly stressful jobs. And I think HSPs can do any job.
Yeah.
We're actually really good at being lawyers because we can see the big picture as well as the finer detail. We can form great relationships. There is no reason why we can't make good lawyers, except it's the culture.
Yeah.
And it's the environments we're working in that makes it very difficult. So
absolutely.
I worked in big firms, you worked in big firms, and I'd love to hear if anybody's a lawyer and they're listening to this and they're an HSP and they're working in a big firm, a big law firm, and you are managing that well. I would love to hear from you and love to hear how you're doing that, because I never managed that. Now, whether I could go back now and do that, I don't know, but I don't want to. I'm in my 50s. I've spent enough time doing that. I've got so many other things to do, like you have, and we're going to come on to those now. But I think, do you know any other HSPs who are lawyers?
I don't think I know any who have said they are HSPs. They're probably like me, don't realise that, like I was until recently, don't even realise they're HSPs. But some of the people I've worked with, in my current wellbeing role, I think, I look back and I think, I think you're an HSP as well. Now I'm learning more about it.
Yes.
Though I think there are more HSPs there. But because, like you say, HSPs actually make good lawyers. So it's it's not surprising in a way that they're there, but they're all busy masking it, just as I did,
exactly.
Because you feel you've got to fit the mold in order to get on.
Yeah.
And then that's what makes it so stressful, isn't it? Because, I always say, liken it to being like a jack in the box. It was like I was stuffing myself down, constantly into the box. And then all of a sudden, the jack in the box is like, well, I've had enough of this. I'm coming out.
The Jackie in the box is coming.
Yay! The Jackie is now Jackie. And it's interesting because colleagues that I worked with back then, who'd see me now are just like, well, you're so different. And I'm like, I'm not actually different. I just didn't show you myself then because I felt I couldn't be myself in that role.
Yeah. And I do think, I'm guessing we're a similar-ish age.
I'm a bit older than you. I'm nearly 60.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay, I would have thought you were a bit younger than me. So we're a similar-ish age because we would have been lawyers in big firms during, like I say that, when I started, we were told we couldn't wear trousers,
Oh, God,
I mean, that's so hilarious now. I mean, it's just, I can't believe that I lived in an age where that was a thing. But, we worked definitely during a time where you were encouraged to leave your home life, your personal life at the door. And when you walked through the door, you were Philippa, Jackie, the lawyer.
Yes. Yeah.
And, so we were encouraged to compartmentalize. So we couldn't be our full selves at work.
No.
And I love the way that it's is changing, not necessarily in the law, but because lawyers are, I find, law firms are quite slow to catch up with, generally, with the way things are changing.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yes, from what I've seen of colleagues who are still in the law, I think, the change is there's certainly, the organisations are talking the right way now.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they're walking the talk yet, I have my doubts. I'm sure there are some good examples out there. I can't generalise because I'm not in it anymore. But from what I've seen and what I've heard from friends who are still in it, I don't think it's that different. And I think it's because the people at the top they're the ones who've gone through that culture that you and I went through. It's people our age who are there now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, it's going to take people coming in from the groundswell from the bottom of people who are more into a different culture to change it, whether it'll take time, I think.
Yeah, it will. And it's so interesting talking to you because I've never really had a conversation like this with an ex-corporate lawyer, about what it was like to be there and now look back.
Yeah.
Because really, and part of me feels a little bit not responsible, because I'm great for taking on responsibility for things that are really not my responsibility. But I almost feel like I would love to be in that position. Not love, that's not quite the right word, but like to be in a position of being able to effect change in those places from the top.
Yeah.
If only I'd found a way to stick it out and get to the top. Yeah. I knew from really early on I was not going to be a partner.
Yeah, me too.
Because I used to say I'm not prepared to sell my soul to the devil, because that is what I saw was needed, or what I believed.
I used to use exactly the same phrase.
Did you?
I am not selling my soul to the firm, certainly. Just because that was what I saw as necessary as well. And I looked at the people who had done that and I thought, I'm not sure you're that happy anyway.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be a partner for that reason.
And that is only saying that to you now that has made me realise. This is why I love having conversations with people, because it just helps me see how in tune I was with myself, but I just didn't know it. Why would I use language like, I'm not going to sell my soul?
Yes.
And I just used to trot it out as though it was a line, but I do think it was coming from a place of knowing.
Yeah, I think absolutely right. Yeah. I used to trot it out as a line as well, but you're right. It was coming from that place of knowing. Yeah. And I think it was a real light bulb moment for me when I actually decided that, because there was a while when I kind of thought, well, maybe I should go for it, because it used to irritate me that I knew that I was good enough to be a partner, and you'd see other people becoming partners and you were as good as them. But then I just decided, no, I'm just going to own this, because I don't want to sell my soul. I want my family life. I want my own life. So I'm going to stay where I am. But it still irked me, because then you'd get clients sort of saying, oh, aren't you going for partner? And why aren't you a partner? And all of that kind of stuff. And then having to try and explain it to people. But it was quite empowering when I reached that point of thinking, well, actually, no, I'm just going to own the fact that I'm happy staying at the level I'm at and doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so familiar. Yeah, and just stay and go, no, I'll come and do a good job. And lawyers, we touched on it earlier, but I think HSPs are drawn to the law, actually, because there is a sense of justice. really.
Yeah.
You know, we do have a very strong sense of justice. And I think maybe some of us go into the law thinking it is about justice. I mean,
yes, if only.
Well, it depends. Well, I was a transactional lawyer anyway, so it wasn't necessarily, it was about bargain, you know, that was about a power struggle, really, rather than it being about justice. I mean, maybe a little bit more about what is right or what is fair, maybe in what you did and what I am sort of, you know, segued into. But yeah, I think partly there was a justice thing going on for me about the law, but I had no idea what the law was about. And obviously when you get there, you realize, oh yeah, okay, that's not really what it's about. I mean, we are working within the confines of the law. But anyway, yeah, so you left 2019. I left in 2019. And I am so intrigued because yes, it does seem like it's poles apart, but also it's not, because the you inside is still the same you. It's just that part of you perhaps that you hid or had to hide or not show while you were being a lawyer is now out there and doing the energy work that you do now. So tell me, can you tell me a bit about that? Because I know a little bit, but I don't know a lot, so please tell me.
So okay, I'll try not to go on too long about it because I can talk.
Go for it. So can I. Go for it.
Just before not long before I left law, I had trained as a Reiki therapist, which I kind of fell into really because a friend wanted somebody to go along with to do it with her. So I kind of was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. I'm not really sure about this thing, but I was blown away by it. So I'd already got that training. So when I got to the point that I had to leave law, I didn't really have a plan actually as to what I was going to do. I just got to the point where I thought, I can't take this anymore. I've got to get out. And I just had that complete inner knowing. So I left and then had time to think. Well, obviously I had 3 months notice period, but, still didn't really know what I was going to do. So I thought, well, I've got the Reiki training. I'll set myself up as a Reiki therapist. So I did. And I really loved doing that energy work with people. But I was finding that it wasn't just the Reiki treatments that I was enjoying giving. The people who were coming to me, again, probably HSPs as it turns out, but people were suffering with anxiety and stress. Those were the people who I seemed to attract without necessarily advertising for them. And I found that I was doing a lot of work with them, just guiding them about, ways to live differently and tweaks that they could make. And so I thought, actually, I need to probably look at this a bit more. It's not just Reiki. So that's where I kind of started moving more into personal growth mentoring. And then recently, I've also got the chakra dancing qualification because it's energy work again, but I absolutely love dancing. That is one thing that I didn't hide about myself when I was in law. I remember colleagues in one firm always used to laugh because whenever we'd go out as a team, we'd always end up with me, having a mad dance in a nightclub at the end.
Great.
So I kind of married the energy work and the dancing to learn this, this new, to me, modality, that's the word I was looking for, of chakra dancing. So I'm really excited about introducing that into my work with people now as well. So because I saw that's what you from your LinkedIn post, that's what you were doing, and now you're doing those. I must try and make it. I don't live a million miles away from you. I'd love, one day I'd love to turn up at one of your sessions. That would be fantastic.
But what is chakra dancing?
Okay, so what it is, so you know about the chakras. I don't want to. So basically, we've got 7 main chakras in our body. I'll just say briefly because people listening may not know.
Yeah, exactly. Please do tell us what they are.
So they're energy centers within our bodies, and each of the 7 chakras goes along the length of your spine, from the base of your spine to the crown of your head, basically. And chakra dancing has been designed. It's so that you get 7 in a session. You get 7 different tracks of music, each one composed to resonate with each of the chakras, starting with the root and ending up with the crown of the head. So you're starting with very kind of tribal, earthy, grounding sort of music, and then it gets, as you go higher up the chakras, then you get into the lighter music, and then as you get to the crown, it becomes quite sort of uplifting, quite ethereal. But it's basically free dance. That's what I love about it, because although I love dancing, when I've done ballroom dancing lessons and stuff in the past, I get fed up with having to do certain routines because I like to just do what I want to do. And so I love chakra dancing because it is all about moving your body to the music in the way that your body wants to move. So as a facilitator, I will suggest certain moves, for example, when we're starting with the root, it's all about being low and, a bit kind of stompy movements, because that's what goes with the music as well. But then people just can do what they want to do. I'm not guiding, I'm not showing them a certain step that they have to do. And it's really liberating. And so when we get to the solar plexus as well, we do a lot of releasing work before we actually fully danced it. And that really does liberate people. And you see them kind of really at that point kind of leaping around the room because they've set themselves free. So it's brilliant.
That sounds incredible.
It is great fun.
Yeah, and you're in your body when you're doing that, aren't you? You're listening to the music, but you're in your body. You're not competing with anybody else because, frankly, it's free dance. You're just doing, connecting to that part of you that is then sort of, telling you what movements to make.
Yeah, and you've got, as you say, you're in your body, so you're out of your head. So you're not worrying about anything. You're just enjoying that freedom and the joy of movement. So yeah, it is very, very good stress reliever as well as being fun.
Yeah, and really great for anxiety, I would imagine, because if nothing else, it switches off those, the voices in our head and the thoughts that just keep going round and round and round.
Yeah,
because we're not our thoughts.
No,
because we can witness our thoughts, we can't be our thoughts.
Nope.
So what are we? And actually, what are we is not up here. It's
inside.
It's inside, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. And that's been my big journey of realizing that, getting out of my head. I mean, actually, I've realized that's quite a good way for me to describe what I would call my journey has been. It's been getting out of my head. And of course, as lawyers, we're in our heads a lot, getting out of my head into my body.
Yeah. And that's so important. So
yeah. And you must see some transformations, really.
Yeah, you do. I mean, some people can get emotional during chakra dancing because it releases stuff, and that's fine. Yeah, so we, as a teacher, we always take our tissues along with us, and just encourage people to let go. It's the same in Reiki, it can, because it's working on people's energy systems, it's unlocking stuff that they've buried within them. It can be very freeing and very emotional. So but I love to do that because I love to see people's transformation. That's one of the most rewarding things for me. It was actually Reiki that was one of the huge things that transformed me. So when I said that I only went to be trained in Reiki because a friend wanted to go, at that point, I hadn't actually had any Reiki treatments myself. So I thought, well, I better go along and have one. And I then started a period of about 5 years of having it very, very frequently, because that, was my healing process. A bit like you with your therapy.
And actually, I mean, I've dabbled in all sorts over the years, and when I left the law in 2011, first of all, I didn't have a plan, but my kids were they're only one school year apart, and they were both starting primary school, and I wasn't going to compete for school holidays off. I just thought, I'm not doing that, so I left. And that's when, then so first thing I did was an Indian head massage course. So I was going to practice as an Indian head massage therapist, but never did that. And then the next thing I did was Reiki. I did Reiki 1 and Reiki 2. I never did get to Reiki master. But as part of those courses, I had to have the person. She was only teaching 2 of us, and we had to treatment. I think it might have been the first time, Reiki 1. And we had a treatment. She gave us a session both days. And the first day was fine. I could sort of feel something, but I was still holding on to it then. And the next day, as she was working back, like down one side of my body and back up the other, I could just feel this wave that I couldn't stop. And it just came it's like a wave crashed over me. And I sobbed like I have not, I don't ever remember sobbing that hard. And she said to me, that I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when it was going to come because you held it back yesterday.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And so I'm a high sensation seeking HSP. So I crave novel and new experiences, and so I'm always doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and that is kind of what led me to Reiki in a way. Well, why not? Let's go and see what that's about. But that is where my first experience of something that I couldn't explain. I didn't even really get, but I was open to it, and it absolutely blew my mind.
Well, that's what happened to me in a sense, because my friend had said to me for years, because she could see how stressed I was, back in law. She said, "Oh, you should have Reiki, you should have Reiki." But I was quite a skeptic. So, well, what's all this about? Don't really know. And of course, so when I went to the training course, I was still very skeptical. And by the end of it, I was completely blown away. And the teacher of that course said to me at the end, she said, "I love the skeptics because they're always the biggest converts." And she said, then you become the biggest advocate for it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is true.
Yeah,
I had a clear out experience. Mine wasn't on my course, but mine was probably a couple of weeks later. And something triggered me to be upset. And I just sobbed for an entire day because I was unleashing all of those years buried hurt. And I did. And because I'd been warned it might happen and I knew I had to let it go, I just spent the day lying on a bed, got through an entire box of tissues. And I actually couldn't have stopped myself, I don't think, if I'd wanted to. I just had to cry myself out. And that was just amazing. Yeah,
it is incredible, isn't it? And I think as a nation we're quite frightened of tears and emotions, aren't we? And I think that not knowing what to do with emotions, certainly for me, is what made me bury them. And then I think that what made me quite scared about letting them out. I kept tight hold of them, and I was like, no, I'm not going to be defined by my childhood, and I'm not even going to think about it. And that was the past, and it's gone, and I'm fine. I am fine.
We're great at that, aren't we?
Yeah. And I think it's a real gift to be able to hold people in their tears and in their emotions, because I think if we are with people who are crying or sharing their emotion or showing their emotions, it sort of triggers something in us. And if we're not in touch with our emotions, then we kind of can't cope with other people's emotions.
It's something I've had to learn, and that's an HSP thing, isn't it? Well, quite empathic.
Exactly.
So I can be in situations with people who are upset, and I have to be careful not with a client, obviously not dissolve with them. If it's outside of that sort of working relationship, then it's not such an issue. But just being aware of it is the thing.
But sitting with somebody in their pain and in their tears, because as you said, you just, like you were describing that day where you just cried all day, you knew you had to do that you didn't necessarily know what was on the other side of that, but you just kind of knew it had to come out.
Absolutely. And that's what I always explain to clients as well.
So it's all perfectly normal. Tears are good. It's moving.
What I always said. I had a recent client, I'd said that to her, and she was it was her first experience of Reiki. And then the next day she messaged me to say, you were right, I've been in tears this morning, but I know it's okay. So
and actually it's more than okay, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a good thing.
It's a really good thing.
They come out.
They do. And the more we've buried, the more there is to come out, really, isn't there?
Definitely.
Well, I'm really enjoying this conversation. And so tell me about being an HSP and discovering you're an HSP. What has that brought to you, or what does that mean to you?
Understanding, I think it's like a light bulb, really. So listening to, because I think yours and Robbie's talk on the summit was one of the first ones that I listened to.
Well, we were on the first day, so
you were on the first day. I can't remember whether I literally listened to it first or not, but anyway, yours and other talks were just like me. As I was listening, it was like all these light bulbs popping around me, and it felt as if I was like ticking off my life. It's like yep. And so I hadn't realized. I knew I was sensitive generally, because I suppose I was just aware of that. I wasn't like a lot of HSPs I know get told, oh, you're too sensitive. That didn't happen to me. But I was always very emotional. Well, I always have been all my life, never mind just in childhood. But yeah, it was just amazing listening to other HSPs talking about what it is to be one. And I just thought, oh, that's me, you know. And then since then, pretty much straight after that, I went online and found Elaine Aron's questionnaire. And I think I ticked yes to every single one, you know. So I'm just like, I'm definitely an HSP. And then reading her book, my husband must be fed up with it because I'm keep reading out passages saying, listen to this. And he was like, yeah, that is so you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like a light bulb about understanding myself, but it also really helped with realizing that is the area that I need to be working in. Because looking back again, the clients that I've had in my wellbeing business, and certainly with my personal growth mentoring programs, I think, yeah, you were an HSP, and you know, we just didn't know it. And kind of the program that I developed for people it's a wellbeing program that is bringing together things that helped me, that worked for me. So looking at it now, I think, well, obviously that's designed for HSPs because I'm one.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's just more light bulbs really, and feeling that this is my purpose, that this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Right. I mean, what a wonderful feeling to feel like, yeah, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's taken a long time in my life to get there, but then you think, yeah, but I wouldn't have got here without all of those experiences, so it doesn't matter.
That's what I think, and that's certainly how I view it. Yes, I'd love to have known more earlier, but I don't think I was ready.
No,
exactly. You know, I wasn't ready to go to therapy earlier, and I went to therapy, and then at the end of that was like, okay, now what? Now I'm not weighed down by all this trauma. Now what? And it was then that I discovered I was an HSP, and I think I had to deal with all that trauma before I could actually step into this true version of me.
Yeah.
And that was always there. It's not like I've sort of suddenly decided to change exactly who I am, but I was having to bury that sensitive part of me because it wasn't safe to be sensitive.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And it is really interesting because I think, you know, given the profession that we went into, it's not a place where one demonstrates one's sensitivity in that. I mean, that definitely is a place where there would be some correlation, or some people would put sensitive and weak in the same place.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's why you end up hiding it, isn't it?
Exactly. But I mean, you know, and that's exactly why Robbie and I talk all the time about the strength in sensitivity. And sensitive is not about being weak. Sensitive is about being able to literally, we're taking in more information all the time. So we are processing deeply much more information, so we are sensitive to very subtle changes, and we can react quicker because we see things quicker, we see things deeper, we can kind of see how things are going to play out. And if only, you know, this myth of sensitive being weak could be dispelled, which is absolutely what Robbie and I are on a mission to do. You know, hopefully we can open non-HSPs' eyes to the value. You know, and I'm not saying we're better, you know, because we're not. We need all different sorts of people, and only 20 to 30%. You know, somewhere between 20 and 30% of the population are highly sensitive. There is a lot of non-highly sensitive people. But we are equally as good as non-sensitive people. We're just different. We're all different. So they're different to us. We're different to them. And actually, you know, there could be a great symbiotic relationship as opposed to, oh, you're too sensitive. Stop being so sensitive.
Yeah. No, I love your mission, and I think it is really important. And it just bringing it back to the sort of the days in law. You know, I used to hate the fact that, you know, when you're getting your annual assessment, you know, you've got to tick all these boxes which are designed for non-HSPs.
Yep.
And I would always try and argue with people that, well, I'm great in that because I always scored highly on the, you know, the empathy with, you know, colleagues and clients type area. But then, you know, I wasn't great at doing business development and stuff because that wasn't I just wasn't my thing. But you had to be a certain person to get on in these firms, and I suspect it's still very, very, very similar. So even though they recognise that there are different types of people, unless you're, you feel you've got to shoehorn yourself into the one that seems to be getting on, rather than the HSP person being valued. And I think that's what it boiled down to with me. I just didn't feel valued for being me, and that really really annoyed me.
Yeah. And if you knew then what you knew now. I mean, I had a client recently who went for a new job, and she actually went to the interview. She didn't say I'm sensitive, but she was talking about her sensitive strength, and how she's really great at connecting people, and she's really great at getting on with people, meeting new people and bringing people together and collaborating. And she talked about other things that she's very good at, and she got the job and she said, and also I'm not very good at these things. And she got the job. And I remember, and it's really interesting because there's obviously been that spark, like that little bit every now and again, that sensitive bit of me would sort of show itself, I think. Because I moved around all the time, moved around cities, because I was searching for something and thought I would find it in the next place, and of course I found it inside in the end. But anyway, I don't know, probably towards my late 20s, I was going for jobs, and I would say, yes, I can be outgoing, and yes, I can do, pressing the flesh and do business development, but I'm not going to come here and do that because I hate it, and I'm not going to do it. But I will come, I will get on well with the clients, and I will do the work well. And I usually got given the job, and they'd always say to me afterwards, we've never had anybody come and say that. Most people, so I mean, it got me out of the business development bit, but it didn't, but it's really interesting how now, with the benefit of hindsight, I can look back and kind of pick these things out and go, oh yeah, okay, it was always there.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing. That's why, for me, as I say, finding out only recently that I'm an HSP, it's just been amazing, because it just to know it's a thing, and I'm not the only one, and there are this 20 to 30% of other people like me, and it's been great connecting with fellow HSPs like you, since the summit, and because we all we talk the same language, and it's just lovely to find your tribe.
It is, because you can talk about things, and like you just get it. You can say things about being an HSP and I'll just get it. You don't have to explain it to me. I will just get it. And actually we've got much more that we can just get as well, because of our similar work background anyway. And you're absolutely right. And anybody who's listening who is only just discovering they are an HSP, I would say find some people to talk to about it, be in community with people. Go and find, if you live in Devon, go to Jackie's chakra dancing. Find some HSPs. Robbie and I have a community. Come and join our community if you want to spend time with more HSPs, because that, when HSPs come together, there's a real magic that happens. And that is about sort of recognizing, it's the HSP in me recognizing the HSP in you. And it I don't know, I just get a bit giddy.
No, it's great. I love it.
So this has been an amazing talk. I knew it would be. Is there anything that you would have liked me to ask you that I haven't asked you, or anything that you would like to talk about?
I don't think so. I've just really enjoyed the conversation that we've been having. Thank you. It is lovely to, like we just said, really meet like-minded people, and people who've had those same experiences, and people who get you. So I just love. Well, I love to talk anyway.
Me too. Me too. So that's wonderful, and I hope that anybody listening or watching, who might be in a working in a stressful environment, a corporate environment, can, and are an HSP, or even if you're not and some HSPs, or people who are struggling at work, it might be because they're an HSP. I mean, I'd love it if there were some, I don't know, bosses of companies who might be listening, who have got some staff who are struggling and think, oh, I wonder if they're an HSP, and I mean, you don't go to your staff and say, I think you're an HSP, but, you know, maybe there's more going on than you realise.
Yeah.
So if we kind of enlightened you or brought some new information to you with our conversation, that would be wonderful. And Jack, thank you so much for spending your time with me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So for now, it's bye from me, and it's bye from Jackie.
Bye from me.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed listening, we'd love you to hit the follow or subscribe button, as this helps other people find us. And it also means you won't miss an episode.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes, as well as suggestions for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to robbielee, leigh.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to boldhsp.com. See you next time.